Little recording voice. All right. So welcome everybody to BoJules Poetry Playhouse. I know a lot of you have been here before, and welcome if it's your first time. So I'm Jules, and we have a special treat tonight with Demetria Martinez and Susan Sherman, and their new book. Here, can I borrow this? I'm gonna show it to our online audience, of Poetry in Dangerous Times, which is a super cool cover. And maybe we can ask them about the cover in our conversation. So, Demetria, so we have two poets, activists, journalists, playwright, change makers, friends. So we welcome them both here to the back porch of BoJules Poetry Playhouse. Demetria, it lives just in Santa Fe, La Cienega, and Susan Sherman is here from New York City. So we really like having the community. We have a community of poets and writers and readers. And I think it's really important to keep that self-care going and to keep the community going in dangerous times. And I know Demetria talked about that, or both of you talked about that in the book and how important that is. So, and then Demetria especially wants to thank John Roach for dreaming up the title Poetry in Dangerous Times for her writing retreat that we did. And then it wound up being the book title as well. So, and Demetria's has many writing retreats with us. So we always welcome her for that. And then we also want to thank Zach Hively with Casa Urraca Press coming here from Abacus. So thank you, Zach. All right. So I'm going to do a quick little intro on Demetria for those of you who may not know her very well, but she was born and raised in Albuquerque. She has a degree in public and international affairs from Princeton, so her background was more journalism. She has a lot of poetry books, and then also the novella Black Captain's Daughter, and then, of course, Mother Tongue. And then the novel Mother Tongue was inspired by Demetria's 1988 indictment on charges of conspiring to smuggle Central American refugees to the US. And she was a reporter for the National Catholic Reporter, and then she was later acquitted on First Amendment grounds. So she's done extensive writing and won New Mexico Book Awards, and I'm really happy that now she's collaborating. The two friends can really have the chance to have this book, Poetry in Dangerous Times. So welcome, Demetria. Thanks. Have you started reading?
Thank you. I really want to thank, of course, Jules and John for creating this beautiful space for all of us. And I really want to thank Susan. I was kind of in a writing funk 2 years ago, and we came up with this idea that we should workshop our poems on Zoom on Fridays. She's in Manhattan and I'm in La Cienega. And so next thing we knew, without ever kind of planning it, we found ourselves with a manuscript, and our friend Margaret Randall suggested Zach Hively and Urraca Press, and we're just thrilled that he's here. So that's kind of the origin of the book. I think one of the things that makes it unique is it opens with a dialogue between the two of us, and that's why you have the title Two Women, Two Worlds. So I'm going to read just a few paragraphs from that. We talk about our origins as a writer and some of the turning points that in some ways made us into writers. Another huge turning point in my own life, right up there with my trial, was my diagnosis at age 30 of bipolar disorder. For a long time, I was afraid of writing about it. I felt ashamed, fearful that others would think of me as crazy. And indeed, a fine line runs between me and the guy muttering on the street to ghosts. I've had the privilege of excellent health care, which has included a stay in a hospital for mania. I've come to see that with such privilege comes a responsibility to write compassionately about my journey and to celebrate the humanity of all those who struggle with mental health issues. Now, when I think of bipolar disorder, I think of it as a journey that has given rise to a number of poems. Fortunately, though, I never romanticized my condition. I never believed for a moment that untreated mental illness makes for better writing, often a myth, especially among some male writers. On the contrary, I have worked closely with my doctors and have achieved what I can only describe as remission. I write now out of a place of stability. And the highs, do I miss the highs? I love nothing more than feeding our goats and hens, then sipping tea on a swing beneath our apricot tree. And I love nothing more than praying the rosary each morning, a practice that paradoxically gives me a high and at the same time grounds me. I figure if the rosary and mass were good enough for my grandma and all my grandmas before her, they were good enough for me. And that has proven true. Glad you're here. Hey, Larry, all right. This is an esteemed audience. We have Larry Goodell, who just celebrated his 90th birthday. And we have a much younger poet, Michelle Otero, who's an amazing poet. Anyway, so yeah, one of my turning points in my life, besides facing 25 years potentially in prison, was the diagnosis after that of bipolar disorder. I'm going to open with a poem called Inauguration Day, which I wrote in 2017. A Mexican nun once told me to refry beans, add a touch of milk. If you don't, have lard. Remember that, friends. Write it down. Write down all such tips from foremothers who have lived through times such as these, who knew to add extra onion for flavor, still more onion to stretch the meal. We have so many to feed and ourselves to nourish, gathering strength to pull the curtain behind which the conqueror cowers. Hot tortillas, splendid table. We hold hands, say the blessing, pass the pepper, pass the salt.
Thank you.
This poem, Birthday, was inspired by the Vietnam War memorial. I was born in the year of the rat, black lung from the smoke of burning American flags. First poems penned by the rocket's red glare. Math was simpler, 58,000 soldiers, and then there were none. I was born in the year of the rat, 38 years, a life still at half staff. Borders. Someday borders will be no more, because too many people died crossing, because still more people survived. Walls will come tumbling down. Monarch butterflies and children will dance among the ruins. Fields of sunflowers will spring up over the graves of the fallen. Their names, Maria, Jose, Jesus, will be inscribed in a new poetry that will not let us forget. My grandma, Maria Jesusita, came here in the wake of the Mexican Revolution, a refugee. Rear views. She used to drive me crazy, my mother in the rearview mirror, donning her Avon lipstick before easing out of the driveway. I was 5 years old. I was in a rush to arrive. Ernie Pyle Library, the children's room where books smelled like a forest after a storm. I sat on the floor. Enlightenment came easy. If not, there was always the card catalog, tarot of titles. I'm older now, in no rush to arrive. I too feel naked without my lipstick, without a book to open like a Japanese screen, behind which I rest, dream, and rise, then read some more until you arrive. Catherine, come on. There's a when I was under indictment, my friend, a friend of mine, Mark Rudd, he was one of the leaders of the Columbia University protests against the American war in Vietnam. He was at some event at Columbia University and encountered Allen Ginsberg, told him about our case. Allen, being a champion of the First Amendment, offered to come out to Albuquerque on his own nickel to the chemo theater, and they raised all kinds of money for our legal costs. And knowing that Allen was coming, I wrote this poem that was inspired by a poem that he wrote called America. Wanted. America, our marriage is coming apart. I've done everything right, got my degree. Now you tell me my English won't do. America, I'm not good enough for you. Better my Spanglish than your smooth talk, America. No, I won't sleep with you, not now, not ever. Ah, come on, America. All I wanted was a little adobe house and a Trisco, a porch swing, 2 niños, some democracy. Now I read in the Albuquerque Journal that you left me for a younger woman, bought guns for drugs, drugs for guns, destroyed Managua in order to save it, spied on communist Maryknoll nuns in Cleveland. America, your face is on wanted posters in post offices, and I'm on sleeping pills again, America. Last night I dreamed the Pentagon was a great Ouija board spelling out repent, repent. In half sleep I reach for you, love, but got only a scent of amber waves of grain. I got up for a hit of caffeine, the book of Psalms, and whoosh, I saw the promised land. You don't need citizenship papers there. It's colored and smells of refried beans. Remember who you are, America. Purple mountain majesty above fruited plains worked by Mexicanos. America, call off your dogs. America, give me a green card, though I don't qualify. America, forgive me if I gag your memory at La Paloma Bar on South Broadway. America, I'm 27 and tired, thanks to you. And thanks to you, I found God on a stoop on Arno Street. America, you claim crimes fierce in this neighborhood. I tell you, it's nothing next to your crimes. The wars we fund start at the packaged liquor store and end twice a year at confession. America, I don't want progress. I want redemption. Cut the shit. We could be lovers again. Don't hang up. America, I'm your dark side. Embrace me and be saved. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I know you can. America, I'm not all bitter. I'm a registered Republican. It was true at the time and it helped my case. At parties when friends ask America who, I introduce you, explain you've had a difficult upbringing. But I can't cover up for you, America. Get that straight. Honey, it's not too late. It's not too late. America, the ball's in your court now. This poem is called Clock. It's dedicated to George Evans in my next retreat that I'm going to be offering here, Poetry in Dangerous Times. We're going to read a poem by George. He was a medic in Vietnam and turned against the war. Clock. Wear a watch that does not work because minutes lie, because hours are nails in the heart of God. Let the hands of time tame you instead. Fingers of shadow, fingers of light. The sun sets sail, the sun docks. Time is scrawled on the sidewalk. Open the curtain. Look in on your life against the laughter of eternity. Are you reading? Are you weeping? Are you setting out a blue bowl of fruit? Holiness flowers in the fissures of this day. Steep the seconds like manzanilla. Wrap yourself in the steam of centuries. Take time's pulse hot in your own hands. Remember Maria. Remember how she walked across the waters of the Rio Grande. Remember how she flashed her passport with a photo of Our Lady of Guadalupe at the border guards. Remember how she waved a broom like a wand, at work wielded rags and buckets until your house shone. There are thousands of Marias with dark eyes that watch you. Don't turn away, or you'll miss a miracle, a story of a nation being born beneath the North Star. The bird, it's my mom. That's how she comes to me.
I love your time.
Grandmother, the cottonwood tree on fire. Golden red leaves color the swing where I sit. In one hand, tea, in another, rosary beads. 63 years. How I wish to become my grandmother. Nothing a Hail Mary couldn't heal, or manzanilla tea. The way autumn opened its wings to her, bead by bead. Mania. Instead of choosing to be the singer, I chose to be the song. Instead of choosing to be the giver of light, I chose to be the light. Too beautiful, too bright. I paid the price. Let's see, two more short ones. This one I wrote for my wife, Camilla. It's was inspired by all the fires that we had in northern New Mexico. May 13th, 2022. Flames eat house after house. Weeds tumble across roads as cars snake south from Española. What would I pack if it were me? Grandpa's poems, Grandma's doilies? Or terrified, would I up and flee with every memory I could fit into a red truck with 3 dogs and the woman I love? And I'll close with the poem that I think is my favorite poem. We have hens, we have 2 roosters, and roosters are supposed to crow at the break of dawn. So I get up to pee, and it's 3 in the morning, and the damn roosters start crowing. So I wrote this poem, but it actually summarizes my whole theology. It's called Like God, the Rooster Crows. Like God, the rooster crows at all the wrong times, trying to wake me up. Some days I hear, some days I don't. When I don't, the darkness hovers, and I am searching, seeking to become one with the light once again.
Thank you. Meeting.
A great way to end the set. And we have birds chirping. Those are quail.
Oh my God.
We have several quail families in these bushes, so we're invading their space a little bit. So I'll introduce Susan and then I'll move this over next to you. So we're really, and welcome everybody else who made it. I know there was a big traffic jam going on. So I'm glad you made it. So Susan Sherman, who is here from New York City visiting with Demetria, and they're on their book tour. Actually, well, I met Susan in Albuquerque many years ago, and then she's been a virtual guest with our Playhouse reading series featuring poets from Icon magazine. So she'll be talking about that later a little bit. So we're really happy to have you in person. And she's a poet, playwright, founding editor of Icon, IKON magazine. She's published 4 collections of poetry, essays, short fiction collection, a memoir. She's had 12 plays produced off Broadway, and among many other awards. And she's also friends with Margaret Randall, and she's been to Cuba and has stories with that. Her autobiography is well worth reading. So I'm really happy to welcome her tonight with the Poetry in Dangerous Times.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. You can just read, and I will just lower this enough to
Lower the boom.
have you on camera a little bit. All right, so you kind of have like the side view.
Good side. Actually, this is the good side.
Her head's on here, so there we go. Okay, that should
So
be good.
bad,
All
so
right.
bad. Well, thank you very much, Jules and John. I'm very honored to be here and to be in the collection with Demetria. And I also want to thank Zach, who is the 3rd collaborator really on this 3-way beautiful little child that we have conceived. I'm going to start also with the dialogue, which I think is a really important part of the book. It's not only about the origins of our writing, but our origins altogether. I was born in Philadelphia. My mother divorced my father immediately after I was born. I guess that's what she was waiting for. After 10 years, moved with my stepfather to California. So I actually grew up in California. I'm a kind of laid back New Yorker because of that. Went to Berkeley, which was the end of the laid back part. And after I graduated from Berkeley, followed the poets who were all coming to New York at that time. That was 1961. And it was right at the end of the San Francisco Renaissance, which was an incredible kind of revolution in writing at that particular period. So anyway, I'm going to read a little bit from the dialogue. And when I mention later, in the end, the most important impact of my first trip to Cuba, I was at the Cuban Cultural Congress in Havana, which is when I originally Margaret and I knew each other because I was published in El Corno in the early 60s, her wonderful magazine, El Corno Emplumado, which I still consider the best literary magazine ever. And then when I started doing Icon a few years later, she contributed to that. And then we wound up in Cuba together, rooming together at the Cultural Congress. And we actually got to meet each other face to face. So anyway, this is apart from the dialogue. As much as I learned during those early years to love poetry, music was my first love. I started playing the piano at the age of 5, even before I started reading, and it has always influenced my writing. There was a room in the university library where you could listen to records of poets reading their work. I was captivated by the sound of their voices. Gertrude Stein, Dylan Thomas, E. E. Cummings, Yeats, Edith Sitwell, T.S. Eliot, Pablo Neruda were only a few of the many recorded. Through them and through the contemporary poets I was beginning to live with and whose work I was beginning to know, I learned that words can also be music. They were tangible, with weight, depth. They were song. Activism didn't inform my writing until it became an important part of my life. A friend of mine early on said to me when I was worried about my poems, their style, their content, You can't really change your poetry until you change yourself. In the end, the most important impact of my first trip to Cuba in 1968 was how it changed me when I returned to New York. It was as if I had never really seen the city before. Previously, my focus had been on what affected me. Everything else was peripheral and blurred. The poverty, the racism, the violence. I began to experience myself and as inexorably linked to the world around me. It turned me from an observer of events to someone who was compelled to engage actively in the struggle for social justice, both in my personal life and as a consequence in my writing, which is the most intimate part of who I am. I'm going to start with a love poem. It's not a happy love poem, but it's a love poem. There was a woman once who was more to me than words, any blending of alphabet and sound. We met at the corners of day, in the space where night crosses light, where shadows fold into darkness. The moments between our meetings were air. 50 years lie between her and this poem, a length of time impossible to render. There was a woman once who was more to me than imagination, wonder, the chimeras that embrace the night, more than the chill kiss of wind that tortured her secret into patterns of light and breeze. A woman who was more to me than forever, the bending of syllable and time. We met on a hilltop in Vermont, made love in the sweetgrass of our desire. These are moments that defy forgetting. These are moments time cannot cure with detail, noise, distraction, mornings that bound us sticky and tight with dew. There was a woman once who was more to me than flesh. We touched to open and then once again to close, the way a negative is held over wary eyes to keep the sun from blinding in the madness of its fire. What lay between us was that strong. What joined us was that fierce, lying in each other's arms. Married, she had never meant for us to happen, had seen me as diversion, a momentary lapse. Now she called me treasure, promised to keep me always cherished, hidden in her private place. But forever is a length of time like any other. One afternoon, precisely at the stroke of one, she lapsed into a silence without boundary. The air lay like a tomb around us. She could not look at me, touch me, say my name. She had never meant it to go so far. It had become too much for her to bear. This woman who meant more to me than words. Should I be grateful? Thank whatever gods or goddesses gifted me this passion, this legacy I cannot relinquish, cast aside. Forever is a length of time without forgiveness. After all these years, I search for her no longer, but for that moment between opening and distance when I held her close, not yet knowing enough to turn away.
Thank you.
The next poem is called Border Guards. It was written when Trump first got elected. Was talking about the wall, the wall, the wall, the wall, the wall. And I was thinking about the walls that keep us out, the walls that keep us in. the walls that national governments put up and the walls that we put around ourselves. So that's what inspired this poem. It's called Border Guards. No. There are lines drawn in the sand that must never be crossed. So say the pundits, the arbiters of boundaries, definitions of what should or should not be said or done. There are lines drawn on maps around cities, boroughs, neighborhoods, blocks, houses, the people who live in them. There are lines drawn around nations, lines teeming with people waiting to get in or out. There are lines drawn around individuals, ethnic, racial, tribal lines, around genders, he, she, they, you, me, them, a demarcation of countries, cultures, continents. There are lines drawn around hemispheres, north, south, east, west, around the earth itself. There are longitude lines, latitude lines. The Tropic of Capricorn is a line, the Tropic of Cancer, the earth as it circles space, as we delineate the seasons. A child takes a crayon, weighs it carefully in her palms. It is yellow, the color of the sun or of her dreams, places she sees in the pictures she thumbs through at night, her fingers scrolling color across paper, purple, then blue and ocean, then fire blazing orange, subtle green trees, flowers, objects without set form, only she knows what they mean. Lines of memory are like that, vivid, weightless, ghost images without boundary. Cézanne, seeing a forest of trees come into being in the dawning sun, paints them obsessively, branches, leaves undulating out of birthing light as they come alive in front of his discerning eyes. All this is not to say we do not need to name things, identify them ourselves. But where exactly are these boundaries, borders, guarded so carefully with passports, rules, and laws? These lines that label us, define us, separate us. These lines that must never be crossed. Mm-hmm. The next poem is very personal. I had mentioned this to, as I was talking before the reading. It's about boundaries and walls and the way we see each other and create these walls around the people we see without even knowing the people we see. You know, I see you, you look a certain way, and immediately blah, 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 blah. It's called What We See. World War II, 1940s USA. Paranoia permeates every corner of our Jewish home. The visual indicator of beauty, approval, acceptance, the ability or inability to hide, the length and structure of the nose. Born to blackouts every evening, songs of soldiers marching from a nearby base at early dawn. I was blessed with a small ski jump astride my face. My sister, not so lucky, at 18, welcomed a beautiful new appendage from which to breathe. My stepfather, behind his back, nicknamed Runt, a cruel caricature, twin brother to the fabled witch, thick body, crooked nose, as if pieces of him had forgotten how to grow. 11 years old, an immigrant, fighting his way up from poverty to a measure of success, he acquired my mother, blue-eyed, blonde, petite, as trophy wife. She could pass where he could not, be accepted in places that shut him out, appearance denying him an entree, even his newly won riches could not buy. Equal parts caring and abusive, racist to the core, he saw himself reflected, looked down upon, despised, like hated others. They deserved nothing, and neither in his mirrored self did he. My mother, oblivious to anything outside her silhouetted frame, had left her own impoverished past behind, turned her back on immigrant parents, never again to speak their names. Growing into the 1960s, denying my own parents in turn, their values, expectations, their past no longer a conscious part of mine, I recognized a more dominant oppression, color, a racism endemic to our adopted home. Anger crowding every corner of my mind, in spite of all my poetry, soul-searching, activism, rage, I was also deluded by surface symbols, visual stereotypes of others and myself. Jewish, lesbian, privileged in more ways than one, true daughter of a mother who didn't look the part. I imagined I could hide, choose when and if and what. I decided to let others see. 2019, almost a century has passed. The merciless struggle to listen, to let others in, to look beneath the surface remains, to recognize discrete individuals behind coined cliches, to fight the stereotypes that foster hate, the invisible nose of childhood still firmly plastered on my face. This next one, a lot of sort of an answer, not a complete answer, so please ask us the question if you want. To the question people ask about what's different now than in the 60s comes up again. Well, this poem is called It Was Easier Then. Everything always seems easier in retrospect. When the stakes are lower, the odds evened out by time. It was easier decades ago, the 60s, 70s, easier when we lost the war. No one likes to be a loser. Easier to have heroes you could support. Ho Chi Minh, Ida Santa Maria, George Jackson, Fred Hampton, Rosa Parks, Lolita LeBron, Assata Shakur, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. It was easier to be 20, the future interminable, the past a history lesson, words on a page, written in script, not blood, not your own, not yet. It was easier at 30, at 40. It was easier last year, yesterday, 10 minutes ago, 1 second before now. Then is always easier than now. For those who dare to look up out of themselves, past their own eyebrows, the ridges of their nose, the corners of their shoes, they know the struggle continues, outlasts us all. Today is, after all, only the continuation of then, tomorrow, the extension of today. Whoever said the journey had an end, whoever set a time, prescribed a date. And the last poem that I'm going to read, I was in Chile in the early 1980s when Allende was in power, 2 or 3 years before the coup. In a sense, this poem almost became a bit of a premonition. It's an interesting experience. I had never found a place where I felt was so democratic, where people on the right talk to people on the left, although I was suspicious coming from the United States about the people on the right being so friendly, which turned out, unfortunately, to be true. But one of my favorite musicians, a folk singer, was Violeta Parra. I had a dear friend who was Chilean and gave me her records. This was at a time when people really didn't know her music here. Although I had seen her wonderful tapestries when I was in Chile. I mean, in Cuba, when I was in Cuba, they have her artwork. And she had an album, it was the last album called Ultimate Canciones. It was the last songs. And so I wrote this poem for Violeta Parra. The only thing, there's a bunch of little footnotes that aren't in the book because I don't like footnotes, but I do want to mention one, is when I say your mountains like my own, like home, I'm not talking about New York, I'm talking about California. First and last poems for Violeta Parra. There is nothing romantic about death, about pain, tears falling like soft clouds, like copper clouds, the color of rusted blood, the texture of fire. The first enemy is fear, the second power, the third old age. All my life, all those books, all those feelings, words, thoughts, experiences, to say such simple words, to feel such simple things. Your mountains, like my own, like home, rows of dust, of light brown soil, as if a gentle wind could level them, could blow them away. The sea touching my nostrils, filling them, a country of smell, of sound, of wine, flowers of salt air, of early morning, opening and opening through my mind, my heart, the extremities of my hands, my feet. If I were a bird and could float, dipping and weaving tapestries of air and light, if we could fly together like silver crows, birds of dream, until everything stops, is silent and gentle, like your songs, your voice. But the world allows us nothing. The world is nerves, is fiber, dust and sand. The world changes constantly. Nothing remains the same. I see you singing into the air as if your voice could fly, be free. Were there creatures above you listening, fishing your gifts from the breeze? Was there a place that could hold you as you opened yourself to it, as you went where no one else could follow, where no one else could see? Each time I have left part of myself behind. Until now, I am mostly memory, mostly dream. What I have left, I give to you, my last love, my last song, the total of all I have ever felt or known. We grow smaller as we grow, as things empty themselves of us and we of them. It is so deep, this thing between us. No name can contain it. Even time trembles at its touch. Thank you. And thanks again, Demetria and Zach. It's right here. Go get it. The books are available. Lots of poems, and the dialogue is over 25 pages between us.
Yes.
So we have a single spaced. We have a lot to say.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we're going to stop the recording now. So our virtual audience
And thanks again,
is
Jules
saying
and
goodbye,
John.
but then we're going to continue. So